Change is terrifying, especially when you're young. For an 8-year-old boy like me, moving across the country was the biggest change imaginable. When you're young, you've made behind feels like the end of the world. I don't remember the move to Gilliman very well. I just remember crying the whole way there. My parents repeatedly tried to console me. They assured me that I would make new friends, and that the town of Gilliman had much better parks and open spaces to play. I refused to listen. "Brian, you're gonna love it in Gilliman, I promise." My dad was driving the moving truck we rented.
Lock in. Get ready for it. Flank left.
No, I hate Gilliman. I want to go back to Springfield. "Oh, Brian, I'm sure you'll love it when we get there." My mother echoed this sentiment. "Roger doesn't seem to mind moving, does he, Brian?" Of course my younger brother didn't mind moving. He was 4 years old and too young and dumb to understand what was happening. He just sat in the car seat next to me, playing with his little stuffed toy alligator. "Mom, Roger doesn't care because he's still little. If he was my age, he'd want to go back to Springfield too." Roger protested the fact that I called him little, but quickly went back to playing with his toy. I continued to cry and whine for as much of the drive as I could. The drive from Springfield to Gilliman is around 13 hours, so we didn't arrive until it was almost midnight. Another moving truck had already dropped off our beds and moved them inside, so we could go to sleep when we arrived. As angry as I was about the move, I was happy to be able to sleep in my own bed, even if I would have preferred it to be in a different location. I went to bed full of resentment and sadness, directed at my parents, of course. Knowing what I know now, I wish I had appreciated them more. They tried so hard to make me happy. I wish I had been nicer to them and complained less about the move. I wish I had been a better son while I still had the chance. When I think about the fall we moved to Gilliman, I think of what could have been different. That horrible game ruined everything. Sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I grew up in the 90s. The year we moved was 1995. And like every other 8-year-old, I was infatuated with my Super Nintendo Entertainment System, which we called an SNES. I plugged more time into that gaming system than I'm proud to admit. It was truly my prized possession. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the game cartridge that was plugged into the SNES across from my bed. For those of you that remember the Super Nintendo, you might remember that almost every game cartridge was exactly the same. They were all plastic, slate gray cartridges, with black or white stickers on the front. But this one wasn't. It was bright blue, and had a bright red sticker on the front. I didn't recognize it. I had never seen anything quite like it before. I was ecstatic, to say the least. I figured that my parents must have gotten me this game to make me feel better about the move. My reservations about the new house faded away the second I saw that game cartridge. Before I could turn on the SNES, my mom called from downstairs. "Brian, come get your breakfast." Reluctantly, I pulled myself away from the console and wandered into the new kitchen. It was far nicer than the one I had grown up with in Springfield. My mother was standing at the stove, flipping eggs. My father sat at the table, buttering a slice of toast. Roger was planted firmly in his high chair, clutching his alligator toy close to his chest, and spooning oatmeal into his mouth. "Good morning, Brian. Did you find the present Dad and I got for you?" A smile filled my face. "You mean the new game?" "I take it you found it then." "Yes! Thank you so much, it's awesome!" My dad ruffled my hair and motioned at me to sit at the breakfast table. "I'm glad you like it. I got it from my new job. I figured you would enjoy it more than I would." My dad winked at me. He had recently accepted a job as a programmer at a technology company named Kalivaki Electronics. His recent employment had been the reason for our move, so I was certainly happy that I was benefiting from it. Although I was itching to play my new game, My parents made me stay at the table until I had eaten several pancakes and a plate of eggs. When I had a chance, I snuck back up to my room to play the SNES. Up until this point, I hadn't actually had a chance to look closely at the game cartridge. As I said, it had bright coloring, but otherwise it looked like a standard game cartridge. The sticker on the front was red, with bright yellow letters. It read, Worryland. The letters were superimposed on an image of a cartoonish ray gun, like something Marvin the Martian would have carried. I'm sure that it sounds underwhelming for anyone from the Xbox generation. Martian would have carried. On an image of a cartoonish ray gun, like something Marvin the Martian would have carried. I'm sure that it sounds underwhelming for anyone from the Xbox generation, but I was practically bouncing off the walls with excitement. With almost no hesitation, I turned on the console and switched on my small TV. The screen stayed blank for a full 30 seconds, and I was about to turn the console off and try again, when my TV suddenly lit up with bright yellow letters. Worryland flashed across the screen. An upbeat 8-bit tune began pouring out of the speakers. Imagine the music from the original Mega Man games. As it beeped and booped, the game shifted into a credit sequence that read, Kalavaki Electronics Company, software like you've never seen before. Like every 8-year-old boy, the thought of playing a new video game was overwhelmingly exciting. That excitement was cut short when a small set of white letters appeared in the top left corner of the screen. You have no worries. Please try again later. I was frustrated. I tried restarting the game several times, but was met with the same result. I pulled the game out of my console and shoved it under my bed. The stupid game didn't even work. I was annoyed with my parents, but I knew it wasn't really their fault. They wouldn't have tested the game or anything. Luckily, I hadn't beaten Mega Man X yet, so I had a different video game to take my mind off of it. I forgot about Worryland. For a while. School started the next morning. I was nervous about going to a new school and starting the 3rd grade. A lot of kids enjoyed the start of school, but I was never one of them. It usually took me a while to make new friends, and I hated how lonely the first few days felt before I had. Third grade started worse than I could have imagined. When I was getting off the bus, I tripped and fell off the step. I landed with a thud on the hard sidewalk in front of my school. Beneath me, something cold and wet was soaking into my clothes. I had landed on my bag lunch, which exploded underneath me. As I stood up, I brushed yogurt and a sandwich off my shirt. Then I heard Ryan's laugh. Ryan was an older boy. He was the kind of kid that gets sent to the principal's office once a week, usually for terrorizing some younger kid. Ryan was an asshole. You're supposed to eat your lunch, not wear it. Ryan's childish joke provoked a cluster of laughter from the rest of the kids getting off the bus. I stared at Ryan, who was easily a full foot taller than me, and had at least 60 pounds on me. Aw, are you gonna cry? Ryan teased. As it turned out, I was. I ran towards my new classroom, tears streaming down my face. I spent the first half of my day wiping tears out of my eyes instead of meeting new friends. No one in my class wanted to talk to me since they knew I was the kid who tripped getting off the bus. They knew I was a total loser. To make matters worse, Ryan confirmed any doubts about my unpopularity at recess. As I attempted to climb onto our playground swing set, I heard Ryan's laugh behind me. Look guys, the crybaby is gonna take my swing. Ryan was surrounded by a group of no doubt loyal cronies. They all laughed. It's not your swing. The laughter stopped. Ryan closed the distance between us in a matter of seconds and grabbed me by the collar. What did you just say? He asked between gritted teeth. Nothing. I quivered. Ryan punched me in the stomach. Hard. I began crying again as Ryan let go of my shirt. I ran away from the swing set, back towards the school. For the rest of the day, I hid in the back of the classroom, alternating between crying and trying to look busy. I hated my new school. I hated Ryan. I hated this town. Everything was ruined. When I got home, there was no one there to greet me. My dad was at work, and my mom and Roger were nowhere to be found. There was a note left on the fridge. Brian, went to the store to get groceries. Please do your homework while I'm gone. Mom. The frustration and sadness I had been building throughout the day remained. I retreated to my room, still crying. When I walked inside, I saw the edge of something blue peeking out from underneath my bed. It was my new game, Worryland. The game didn't work the day before, but I felt the need to try it again. Almost without thinking, I removed Mega Man X from the SNES and I plugged in Worryland. The same title screen appeared as last time, and 8-bit music poured through the speakers. But this time, instead of seeing the white text telling me I was worry-free, I heard a voice coming from my TV speakers.
What worries you, child?
The TV screen remained black. I didn't say anything.
Brian, you have to tell me what's wrong.
The game had said my name. I was awestruck with the technology. Clearly, this game was going to be better than I had originally thought. I looked for some cue of what I should do. Hesitantly, I tried responding to the game. I had a bad day at school. There was this bully. His name's Ryan. He hit me. Those were all the words I could muster. The game's screen slowly changed. It became a small, pixelated school building. I could tell it was a school because I could see a school bus through the glass doors on one side of the screen. On the left side, there was a little character. He was wearing a red shirt and blue shorts, but his clothes had stains on them. After a moment, slowly changed.
He died as he lived. A total suck.
Those were all the words I could muster. The game's screen slowly changed. It became a small, pixelated school building. I could tell it was a school because I could see a school bus through the glass doors on one side of the screen. On the left side, there was a little character. He was wearing a red shirt and blue shorts, but his clothes had stains on them. After a moment, I realized I was wearing a red shirt and blue shorts. They too were stained from when I had fallen on top of my lunch. The little character in the game was supposed to be me. The only difference was that this character had something in his hands. It was a little ray gun from the front of the cartridge. I pressed the directional buttons on the controller, and the character moved accordingly. I navigated the little pixelated version of me throughout the school. After a moment, I came upon two pixelated children. They had speech bubbles over their heads, and their crudely animated mouths were flapping open and shut. The speech bubbles read, "Look at the crybaby. Nice shirt, loser." Reading the text brought back my frustrations. I pushed the X button on my controller, hoping something would happen. It did. The little ray gun that my character was holding fired. A cartoonish laser blast pierced through the kids. Instead of disappearing like in most games, Their characters exploded into a gory shower of blood and guts. The gore was surprisingly detailed, especially for a lower resolution game like this. I was a little confused about the objective of the game, but I pressed forward. My character moved through an open doorway onto a playground. The playground hadn't been rendered in much detail, and the only clear piece of equipment was a swing set. In front of the swing set was a little pixelated person. He was taller than my character, and he looked older. This little person also had taller than my character, and he was a little pixelated person. He was taller than my character, and he looked older. This little person also had a speech bubble above his head, but seemed to alternate what it was saying. This is my swing. Look at the little crybaby. You're supposed to eat your lunch, not wear it. This character was supposed to be Ryan. I had no idea how the game could capture the situation in such detail. I was beginning to feel sick to my stomach. Suddenly, a voice came forward from the speakers once again.
Brian, don't you want to be worry-free?
I sat on my bed and stared at the screen. What was this game?
Brian, press X to end your worries.
I hesitated. This game must have been for an older kid. I was starting to get that nagging feeling, like I was doing something that I wasn't supposed to be. I began to reach for the off switch on the SNES. Then I heard another voice come through my speakers. "Aw, you gonna cry?" It was Ryan's voice. I pressed X. The little ray gun fired, and Ryan's avatar exploded. There was a cartoonish scream, and the same graphic gore exploded on the right side of the screen. The screen went black again. Little white text appeared in the upper left corner of my screen. You have no worries. Try again later. I went to bed feeling twisted up inside. I felt like throwing up. My dad must have been able to sense my guilt because when he was telling me goodnight, he asked, "Brian, is something wrong?" "No, Dad. I'm just tired." "Okay. You'd tell me if there was something wrong at school, right?" "Yes, Dad." "Okay. Good night, Brian." "Good night, Dad." I didn't see Ryan on the bus the next day. I didn't see any of his friends either. In fact, I never saw Ryan or his friends again. For years, I didn't know what happened to them, but I always felt like it was my fault. I always felt guilty. A couple years later, I looked up Ryan's name from our old school directory. I was trying to find out whether he had moved or had been taken out of school for some reason. I figured that his sudden disappearance was strangely coincidental. All I found was a news article, dated September 1996. Almost a full year after I moved. Bodies finally found in missing persons case, September 16th, 1996. After a year of waiting, the bodies of Ryan Ruby, Sam McArlett, and Ashton Freeber had finally been recovered. The three boys disappeared from their homes on August 26th of last year. There had been no leads as to their whereabouts. All three had a previous history of delinquency and behavior issues, so it was expected that they ran away from home. However, Sheriff Lopez has stated that the three bodies were found near the edge of Gilliman Reservoir several days ago. They were identified by their school IDs, which were found in their pockets. Sam McArlett and Ashton Freeber were both found fully intact, save for minor cuts and bruises. Ryan Ruvy's body, however, was found severely mutilated and dismembered. All three appeared to have been shot in the head. The investigation into their disappearance has been reopened. All three families have declined to comment at this time. August 26th was the first day of school. That was the day I played Worryland for the first time. After that, I could barely bring myself to look at it, let alone play it again. I buried it beneath my bed and quickly pushed it out of my mind. I wish I could say that was the only time that someone played Worryland. But that isn't the case. My mom was out of town at the time, so my dad was the only one in charge at our house. My dad was a good man, but wasn't an expert when it came to child caring. He wasn't as patient with Roger or I as my mom was. One night, Roger and I were acting particularly unruly. Roger had refused to eat his dinner. Dad had made spinach, which was something Roger particularly hated. Dad had grown tired of arguing with my 4-year-old brother. He grabbed Roger's alligator toy and told him, "I'm taking this away. You can have it back when you eat your dinner." Roger, only being 4 years old, didn't fully understand why his favorite toy was being confiscated. He immediately burst into tears, and the second my dad turned around, he fled the room. The phone began ringing, and my dad picked it up off the hook. He motioned for me to go get Roger. I followed Roger out of the kitchen and turned the corner just in time to see him reach the top of the stairs and run into my room. The only reason Roger ever went into my room was to play the SNES. He wasn't any good at it, but I think he liked the music and the colors. I called after him. "Roger, you have to come eat dinner. You can't play video games right now." There was no response. I heard my door slam shut and lock. "Come on, Roger. Just eat your dinner, and I'm sure Dad will give you back your alligator." As I approached the door, I heard a familiar 8-bit theme begin playing. I struggled to place exactly what the music was as I fumbled with the locked doorknob. Then I heard a voice.
What worries you, child?
In a panic, I began pulling at my door. I tried and tried to force it open, but it was too strong for my 8-year-old body. I heard Roger answer, "My dad is being mean." I listened intently as the game's music quieted. I heard Roger pressing buttons. I heard my dad's voice come from downstairs as he talked on the phone. I heard the game speak again. It was calm and even, almost peaceful.
Press X to end your worries.
Panic flooded my brain. I screamed for Roger not to press X. I screamed for my dad to stop talking on the phone. I was too late. A cartoonish scream came from my room. A real one from the kitchen. I ran downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The phone, which had been in my dad's ear just a second before, was lying coldly on the ground. A dial tone poured out of the receiver. The back door was open. They never found my dad's body. I'm not sure that I want them to. I don't think I